According to my watch, it's 12:33. So I think we will actually start the formalities. So just from my side, Annemarie van der Merwe, Executive Chair at Fluid Rock. It's my absolute pleasure, together with my co-host Frik Landman, the CEO of SGI, to welcome you to another of the Directors' Hour. I think just by way of introduction, for those of you that may not be that familiar with either or both of SGI and Fluid Rock, we partnered, and I'm going to tell you a little bit on the areas in which we've partnered just now. SGI, or Stellenbosch Graduate Institute, is an online business school, and with a reach into Africa. I was saying to Frik the other day, he definitely had foresight to, a couple of years ago, start with thinking of an online business school, especially with a reach into Africa, which have obviously also meant that they're well positioned in the new norm and the new normal that we all expect to be part of post lockdowns and viruses and everything else. I think they are in a great position to really assist in working and enhancing and growing the leadership, not only in South Africa, but also in Africa. So great for us as Fluid Rock and Fluid Rock Corporate Governance, group as well has. We work in, as you know, most of you may know, in the governance space as consultants. Our vision really is to see society, and this is what we say in our vision, and it's not changed for many years, to see a society that's really fueled by ethical and well-governed corporate citizens. And I think that really makes us and SGI great partners as well. So in addition to spending literally thousands, yes, just please make sure we mute our mics, please. Joe, if you can just mute your mic as well. Thank you. So in addition to spending literally thousands of hours in boardrooms as the Fluid Rock team, we also do quite a bit of training with directors, executives and company secretaries. And it's for that reason that we've identified SGI as a partner for joint initiatives, one of which is the online effective directorship course that we launched on the SGI platform. And if you've not seen that, I really would encourage you to go and check that out. It's a 3-week program that really covers all aspects of directorship and executive, an executive planning on becoming a director as well. It's really, it is a bit of a subjective view because I was the presenter of that course, but I really want to encourage you, because I have to tell you, my 30 years in walking in the corridors and spending time in the boardrooms, not only in South Africa, but in our neighboring countries and a few other places, one of the dynamics that have caused me the greatest concern is the level of ignorance of directors and executives, just having an understanding, just the basic. I'm not saying being an expert or senior counsel when it comes to the Companies Act, but just being having a basic understanding of what directorship and an executive position in an organization entails. So I'd really like to encourage you to go and have a look at that. The other area where SGI and Fluid Rock said, let's partner together, is what you now all part of, and that's the Directors' Hour, to say, is there a way in which we can also bring you together with thought leaders out there, with experienced directors and executives, to share with us some of their wisdom and experience, etc., to assist, especially in a time now, but on an ongoing basis. So the intention of the Directors' Hour is really every second week to address a topic that we believe are relevant and topical for directors and executives, and specifically with a practical application, practical approach and focus. So please keep your eye open for our next invite and communication that will address the topic for the 14th of May. The intention right now for us is to actually host a few seasoned directors on the couch to talk about some of the lessons they've learned in the years, what I would call the scars on their back of being in the boardrooms of many different kinds of organizations, and both public and private sector, because I really think we need to address both of those, because they are equally important for us to have a healthy South Africa incorporated. I have a few people online. Jimmy, if you can, there's Jimmy Ellery, maybe just also switch off your cameras. Please make sure that both your cameras and your sound is muted. That will help greatly for us as well in having a good quality for everybody online. With that said, it's my absolute pleasure to introduce today's speaker. Wow, what a seasoned, really seasoned person to talk to us on a very important topic at this point in time around reputational management. You may have seen from the communication that we've set out, and some of you may have gone and Googled Janine as well, so you would already know that Janine, in 2005, she started after a long, very successful corporate career. She ventured out. She was the founder, CEO of Vuma Reputation Management, that is very well known in many organizations, both in private and public sector. And very recently, after having grown Vuma to stand on its own 2 feet and to sail on its own, Janine has started a new venture called Authentic Leadership. But her knowledge, her understanding and experience, I think she says, spans over more than 38 years in different sectors. Very well versed to talk to us about the practical implications of reputational management. And I'm really looking forward to listening to Janine. Can we again also encourage you, please drop us your questions in the chat box. I am going to keep my eye on that while Janine is speaking, and I will be hosting and posting some of those questions to Janine afterwards as well, so that we make it a little interactive. With that said, the 1 or 2 cameras still on. Winston, thank you very much. Please, if everybody can make sure that their cameras are off, they mute, and so that we give Janine a good opportunity and everybody to hear Janine clearly without any unnecessary interruptions. Janine, with that, I'm going to hand over to you. Thank you very much. Just also thank you to our team, Marianne, everybody behind the scenes, once again, stunning, sterling efforts and work. Thank you for that. Janine, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Anna-Marie. Thank you so much for your time, and great to see everybody on signing on. Anna-Marie, I've just sent you some details. I see some people are trying to just dial on. It seems to be maybe there's a blockage or whatever, but a few people can't seem to get on. Maybe we can just help them out. If not, obviously we'll load up a copy a little bit later. Okay, so reputation management, a lot of people say they know all about reputation management, and after I've started chatting, I'd love to know what your interpretation of true reputation management is. So I'm going to give you an analogy of exactly what it is. It is not PR. It is everything but PR. PR is about a 15% aspect of that, and it is about how you as leaders lead through turbulent times. And that's what I just want to take you through 2 very simple slides. So Rihanna, if you wouldn't mind just clicking through to the first slide, I really would appreciate it. It really helps us understand the difference between brand reputation and what people talk very glibly, oh, it's publicity or PR. It's definitely not. And I think as leaders, where we find ourselves at the moment for an incredibly turbulent time, that a lot of people are grasping at straws, looking at their crisis management tools, or as business leaders, where do we take ourselves from here? So if I can see on the left-hand side, you see about brand. Brand is something that is very valuable. So the brand of our country, so South Africa's brand as a country, is vitally important. Why is it important to us? Well, it's important when it comes to the rating agencies. It's very important to our international recognition. It's very important when our president stands on the stage, when we're part of BRICS, or whether we're part of any global forum. When we have recognition, the standing of our country's brand is important. So you build a brand through vision, mission, values, all that we all knew, but we also know it adds to our marketing, our advertising, and all that aspect. So your design of your logo, your radio advertising, your TV advertising, everything that you can actually control is what brand is. What you can't control is the reputation. And that's where people have maybe faltered. And I think we fault a lot as a country. There's a lot that we can do as a country. We can do a lot as citizens to play an incredible role in building the country's reputation and our own personal reputation, and of course business or an SOE or your own community's reputation. So the way you go about it is you say, what do I stand for? So what does our country stand for? What do I stand for as a leader? What do you stand for as a leader? What are those attributes as a leader that take part of that? So in building a reputation, it's what people would think of you when you basically walk out of a room. So they might know the brand Starbucks but will they actually like the coffee when they go into that shop, or will they actually go into that shop and will they pay the price of that expensive coffee? That's where we're at. So the difference between brand and reputation is very important. And the investment in reputation has not been made. And there's a lot to go for it. So if we look at what is brand and reputation, if we can just go to the next slide, Rian, very simply, I've broken it into 8 pillars. So if you see in the middle section, what are we working towards? Trust. At the end of the day, even for me to come onto this platform, I mean, you know, Anna-Marie and myself chatted, Frick and I chatted beforehand, and for them to even have trusted me to have come into this platform means the reputation is intact. And I have to now earn your trust in this brief period of time through what I say, how I say, through utilizing certain pillars. So just take this into your own environment and your own business environment, your own company, or, you know, I see Jeff Rothschild's online. If you look at Brand South Africa, our leadership. Now, if we take our country's reputation, right now, I must say, our president is doing a phenomenal job, but he's coming from an incredibly low base. We came off a very high base, obviously our first 5 years of transformation, with our leader at the time being Nelson Mandela. But we sadly slid lower and lower. And now is our time to revive that. And you can see through leadership, through the way you lead with efficacy, with transparency, with regular communication, with integrity and transparency, you're able to revive that. But you can't just build a reputation based on one leader. That's incredibly dangerous because that leader will move on. That person will move into a different dimension. You can see currently we have a president that's currently even heading up the AU. How on earth does he head up the South African environment through challenging times and also take the AU and the rest of Africa through challenging times? So hugely split. So we need to make sure that our leaders are really well taken care of and they also keep to their gambit. What we need to enhance through challenging times is our marketing efficiency. What are we doing right now as organizations or as countries to effectively mobilize our marketing efficiency? Are we placing ourselves in the marketplace? Are we doing webinars? Are we doing lectures? Are we mentoring people? Are we being seen out in the marketplace? And that's about being efficient. That's utilizing the space. And if I use a very good example, there's been the new CEO of the JSE. I must say Dr. Leila Fourie has really been very generous with her time with the media. She also is the deputy chair of the UN for sustainability. So she's managed the balance between the two of social cohesion, but she's been out in the marketplace. And that's crucial to be bringing the stability into the marketplace as in a country's stability currently. Innovation. What are we doing as leaders in our business that's innovative? So all of these 8 pillars are crucial themes that one needs to incorporate in your communications plan, in your crisis plan, in your scenario planning, and most importantly, in your key messages. What do I mean by that? So when you have a head of corporate affairs or your communications people or in your own business that you're leading, make sure in your communication you have a full thread for an entire year. A plan that you're able to build your organization into a thought leader, utilizing all these pillars to unpack it succinctly all the way through consistently. And what I've noticed, unfortunately, over the period of years, and Anna-Marie, thank you for reiterating 38 years. So yes, it has been 38 years, and certainly been running, an organization for the last 15 years. And that was what I set out to do, was to truly learn. If I'm going to work with CEOs that have gone through challenging times of startups, I wanted to understand exactly how you start up, how you go through transformation, and how you walk away as a sustainable leader. And that was a very important growth path for myself. So I always believe that if you're going to be a teacher, be able to have walked in other people's shoes. So coming back to this model, before we open to questions, if you look at it, if you consistently cover these 8 pillars, this is tried and tested. I've worked directly with universities in Switzerland to align this thinking, and it's cutting edge thinking. This is not about something that I've just read in a textbook. This has been tried and tested. And if this is something that we consistently work through in our models, we focus on our human capital. We focus on the impact on the bottom line, not just the impact on the bottom line. Incorporating all these aspects. The other thing is, very simply, we glibly talk about King 4, we talk about ethics and transparency, but are you truly transparent with your employees, with your suppliers, with your executives as leaders? And of course, most importantly, are you transparent with the marketplace? And I think, sadly, we've seen a tremendous amount of knocks and negative influence. I don't even have to mention the names in the circle that we know very well. And that transparency and efficacy has not held, and has done a tremendous amount of damage to South Africa's reputation, the Johannesburg Stock Exchange as well. And of course, the rating agencies have knocked South Africa very heavily for that. The other thing, as I've put in, you can see the 8th one is definitely around talking about transformation and social cohesion. We can't ignore it. I think, if anything, where we've been brought to right now, that's going to be one of our most important pillars that we have to consider. Transformation is a must. It's not something we're considering. It's not something that you'd like to do. It's not a tick box. It's a process and a mindful understanding of the journey that you take your organization through. It's the words that you use. It's the terminology that's inculcated in the very fiber of that organization. And of course, the most important, if you're going to be working with customers, make sure that even if it's B2B or B2C, we're bringing in the social cohesiveness of our very fiber of our fabric of our society. It's no use having a shop on the corner of the street if people are too poor to actually come and buy from that retail store on the corner. So it's important that we now need to start looking at our very business model and seeing how we can take some of our profits and share it with other people to make them more wealthier, to enhance their wealth so that we ultimately can benefit from that, but do it with transparency, honesty, and make sure with dignity. Over to you, Anna-Marie.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that, Janine. Sophia, I see you've got your camera on, so maybe you can just switch off your camera for us. We have a few people that still has their cameras on. I'll appreciate if we can switch those off. Janine, thank you for addressing us on this very important topic, and I really, and again, want to encourage our attendees and our listeners to come with their own questions as well. I know some had difficulties with seeing the slides, and I'm hoping that either that has been sorted out, or we can ask that we also just post these slides on our website so that you can visit them afterwards. But Janine, I want us to talk a little bit more practically now as well. And you started off by talking around PR and reputation management. And in your first slide as well, spoke on branding versus reputation management. You've got your slide with your 8 pillars. Can you, just from a practical point of view, share with me a little bit about, on sort of the day-to-day, what is the stuff that tangibly a board should have in place, should be looking at, should be developing, that would enhance and assist them to make sure that they have a handle on reputation management?
Thanks, Anna-Marie. I've sat on numerous boards. I still sit on a few boards. And, I think the greatest frustration of any board is the filter between management and the board. I'm sure there's a lot of smiles sitting around here. It's how do you get the information directly from your executives with authenticity and integrity? So I think it is also about the board's reputation. It's obviously the chair, but importantly, the board has to have a reputation. So when people are appointed to boards, let's make very sure we've got the right people appointed to the boards, first of all. The second thing, that board needs to have the right skills. I think the board certainly needs to understand their guidelines. And I'm very pleased that you've got the director's course, because I think a lot of people don't take the time and effort to go and do the director's course because they want to sit on boards for the sake of sitting on boards. And I think that is a very dangerous situation for management. So when you don't have a skilled enough board, it puts a tremendous amount of pressure on the management team. And management end up doing documents after documents after documents after documents because the board generally don't understand the business. So I also call out to leaders that sit on boards, begin to understand the business. And many years ago, I learned that. And in fact, it was the early days of me joining First National Bank. In fact, Michael Jordan, the first month, he said, all I want you to do is see the branches, see the people, understand the very makeup of the organization before we start the big turnaround, the big changes into what the innovation is today. So my call to boards is know your stuff, know your boundaries as well. Take the time to learn the business. And that's not about what's in a board pack. It's about understanding the people behind that business, understand what makes that business tick, understand the important stakeholders, and then ultimately offer to be a mouthpiece and a spokesperson. And also you can start enhancing that business by creating opportunities.
Thanks for that, Janine. I think, you touch on a very important point around the composition of our boards. And there was a study done, I think, in 2013 on the root causes of 40 corporate disasters. There is a document out in the public domain around the findings of the root causes of these corporate disasters. The first comment that I think is important to make is that they said that all of these root causes emanated from the boardroom, which is a scary thought. And I think that again just stresses the importance of understanding the impact of a board, the positive impact of a good board and the negative impact of a bad board. But I don't think one should underestimate that. That's the one point. But the root cause that they identified as the largest contributor to the corporate disasters that they were interrogating was the NED skills and influence. So your composition of your board, having the right people in there, are really, really critical. And it's really an area that I think in South Africa, but not only here, we need to start focusing on, both in private sector and in public sector. And Robin, I will give you afterwards. I'll send out a link to the research that I was just referring to. But it really talks to the issue around board composition, and it brings. Janine, and I'm just going to make a few comments and then you can maybe please respond to that. But it brings about also the importance of the ethics and the trust that you used words like, transparency and trust. I think what often organizations and boards underestimate is that, or get wrong, is they believe that they can create a persona into the, and set up an image to the outside world that may not necessarily be aligned with the true DNA of the organization and the board itself. And they do believe that people actually believe that is, who this organization is. So for me, I think what is very critical, that boards need to understand that, the person, the man on the street out there are not always that gullible, that if there's not authenticity, if there's not congruency, and I'm using all these big words, it's very difficult for a blonde van der Merwe, so bear with me here. But if those elements are not there, you're not going to be successful in your reputation that you want to give out to the marketplace out there. Talk to me a little bit about us thinking as boards that we can tell and the outside world that this is who we are. You can trust us, while back at home, that's not how we actually operating inside the boardroom walls. If you can just maybe share with me your comments on those observations.
So Anne-Marie, I think we've seen this far too often where you've seen very good advertising being done. And I think recently, I think the one that I was very upset about was the Romano pizzas. I'm banned from eating pizza, so I'm not a lover of pizza, but Romano's pizza advertising is always all over the show. And they even won customer service award, and they're doing exceptionally well. Yet last year they went into liquidation and they were unable to pay for quite a few of their suppliers, to the extent that even the US office has refused to honor that Romano's pizzas have ever been in South Africa. So there's a complete indifference between the international office in the US, the South African franchise, South African suppliers, South African employees, and the way the business has been run. And with a holding company called Taste Holdings, which was listed on the JSE. Now, though, that just shows you that you can have all the best advertising in the world, but something is amiss with the business case. So you could have sat on the Taste Holdings board, and maybe there is somebody in here that's more familiar with it than I, but having media trained the CEO and having media trained the CFO at the time, fantastic individuals, go-getters. They know what they're wanting to do. They know what their business model is. But at the end of the day, does their advertising match the product? So if you see in the 8 pillars, it talks about the quality and products of services. So one must be very careful to ensure that when you do your advertising, communication, and marketing, you're aligning it to the deliverables from an operation point of view. Ensure that whatever you're spending needs to be in line with what you're receiving. And I think one of the greatest teachers that taught me that was in the early days of launching eBucks was Paul Harris. I'd come from a marketing budget of over 600 million sitting at Vodacom at the time, and moved across to Prime Media at the time, so and learned to understand the media world, and then landed up with Paul Harris as my direct teacher at launching this product called eBucks. And he said to me offhand, how much money do you need to launch this? And that was to get me across to join them. And I said, oh, casually, 150 million. And he said, he looked at me and he smiled. He said, yeah, sure, you've got it. But he looked at me, and as I signed the papers a couple of weeks later, I realized I didn't have 150 million. He gave me 3. And the key thing was, and we're talking 20 years ago. So I looked at him and, what on earth do you want me to do with this kind of money? I mean, really, he said, think. I need you right now. Times are challenging. We're going through the dot-bomb era. There's challenging markets. We need to really be smart. I know you can do it. And we went into overdrive. And it really was about effectively looking at what can be done with the smallest amount of money, thinking out of the box, working directly with leadership at the time, harnessing suppliers, harnessing technology, and really making that 3 million rand stretch. Now that 3 million rand today is like giving us, 800,000 as a marketing budget, which is nothing to launch a product, but we did it. And the sustainability of that, he almost showed me walking with two hands. How do you grow a business? Step by step by step. And too often, I think, when we do a business case, we throw so much behind it. We complain about loans. We can't get access to funding. You don't need it. You need to get out there, start utilizing your networks, maximizing on your networks, maximizing on your stakeholders, and get out there and get your product out.
Thanks, Janine. I was thinking while you're talking about, you were just talking now around also the issue on the culture and of the organization internally, and how that impacts for those of you that are interested in doing a bit of research. The NACD, which is the equivalent of the Institute of Directors in the US, a few years ago, not too long ago, did a study on culture as a corporate asset. And if you just Google culture as a corporate asset, NACD, you should find, although there is quite an extensive report, there is also, I think, a 40-odd page short summary, executive summary of the findings. And of course, they make the point that as much as a good culture in an organization is an asset, a bad culture is a liability. And it's the same with your reputation, and you touched on the issue on stakeholders as well, and I want to make this observation. In many of the boards that we move in and that we operate in, I still find today that boards seem to believe that they know what their stakeholders think of them, that they know who they, well, let me start with that. They know who their shareholders are, they know what their shareholders think of them, they know what their shareholders want, and they know how best to meet the needs of their stakeholders. Sorry, I'm not saying shareholders, their stakeholders. And they've never asked their stakeholders. So I want to really encourage all the organizations out there and the people on the call to really make sure from an executive board level that we've actually take time out to have a discussion on, are we all aligned with who are our key stakeholders? What is the perception of our key stake? It's no use us scoring ourselves 4 out of 5 for ethics and having an ethical culture. Yet if I go and speak with the man on the street and I ask them what their perception is about the culture and your reputation as an organization, they score it 1 out of 5. There's something wrong, and somebody is smoking something. So it's important that we do not assume, that very good saying about old classic saying about reputation, assumption is the mother of all big trouble. It is important that we go out and we test the assumptions out there as far as, and the views and the perceptions of people as far as our reputations are concerned. How best, Janine, can one do that without having to go into a major, highly costly kind of exercise? Is there ways in which we can test the water fairly quickly to get a feel for what the view of the man on the street is of our organization?
So, Anna-Marie, interesting. I come from the ranks of really being a key account manager and in the younger age of 25, 26, 27. And I always found that people are afraid to serve. And why do I say this? I mean, as leaders, the authentic leader that's got to come into power has got to be able to serve. So what I mean by that is those are our stakeholders. Our stakeholders are the people that pay our salaries. So if we are on a board, or we're an executive or a team or an employee within an organization or an SOE, we've got to get to know who pays our salary. So it was interesting when I ran a course just recently for a day on stakeholder management, and I expected us to show people, and it was a room of about 50 people, and everybody was at reputation management level and director level. And interesting, Anna-Marie, what I found was everyone knew how to put the plans together. So maybe I'm sure everybody in this forum knows exactly how to put their plans together. But it's how do you harness that network? How do you constantly keep in touch with that individual? How do you care? And what I mean by that is, I see Dion is online here, you know, the previous colleague of mine from eBucks days. And the key thing is you've got to make the effort. So it's about putting your ideal plan together. Who are your suppliers? Who are the regular people you need to see? Break them into primary and secondary. Identify who you need to see within the first 3 months, 6 months, or year. Don't only make contact with people when you need them. And so people tend to treat media as an add-on, and they don't build relationships with the media. We have to put a plan in place that you have to build a consistent, reliable plan that you either make a telephone call to somebody, send a respected letter, a company letter, regular letters, regular emails, a WhatsApp every now and again. How do you keep in contact with your customers or your daily stake? Guess what? Send them information about the organization. Now we've got a master of stakeholder management on the line. It's old Jeff. And I think we all know that. It's who doesn't Jeff know? And he's been a great teacher to me because I think it's about making the effort. First of all, understanding other people's predicament. If it's their birthday, wish them. If it's the anniversary, wish them. Utilize various tools in the marketplace, whether it's social media, whether it's a telephone, whether it's SMS or WhatsApp. But the key thing is make contact with people to reach out with them. If you don't make the effort, they won't be there for you when you need them.
Thanks for that, Janine. We had a question that I wanted to, and I have, I'll maybe just say one or two things and then give you time to just gather your thoughts. But there was a question around to what extent people use the integrated annual report to promote their reputation. And I have very, let me maybe come with the negative views and then you can come with the more positive views. But in my perception, my experience, you know, the integrated annual reports of our listed companies are not correctly used. I don't think it's there's a lot of thought that go into how that is part of building the reputation of the organization. It's still a lot of a tick box kind of approach to the integrated annual reports on the one hand. On the other hand, if you go and look at some of the studies that were done around corporate disasters, every time one of the common themes is, if you go and look at the integrated annual report, they were making all the right noises, they were saying all the right things about how good they are and, you know, how they responsible corporate citizens. And there's a point that I made at the start. Yet back at the ranch, that was not how they were operating. That was not what was driving, really truly driving the business. So I still see a huge gap between, you know, in really embracing and correctly using integrated annual reports as more than a compliance tick box tool, and really being a potential tool for building your reputation. Share with us your views, please, on that.
So it's an interesting one. It's almost like people choose to use those documents to be their PR, you know, face to the marketplace. And I think not enough attention is paid to those very important documents. They should be focusing on efficacy and transparency. And that's why this model that I've created on the 8 pillars is vital. I see somebody asked earlier on about the research of something like this, and I'll touch on that now. But the key thing, Anna-Marie, is when we go into integrated reporting or annual reports or any of the reports that truly reflect the organization, I think too often, yes, it's managed by the CEO ultimately and the chair that puts the signature on the documents. But has everybody truly reviewed the document? Have their comments been heard? Is it just a document that is there for the relevant individuals to get a bonus? Or are we actually reflecting that organization effectively? So I think that's where we're starting to get a little bit lost in translation. And that's when we start the smoke and mirrors. And that's exactly why I bring us back to the first document where I said, what's the difference between brand and reputation? Those documents effectively all add up to the brand. That's not building your reputation. What people will find out in your reputation is the negative articles that are written about you, or people are starting to ask about the efficacy and transparency. People will start asking about, but what about this person that was suspended? And what is happening about this individual over here? And what happened to those misappropriated funds over there? So eventually, you're right, as you said earlier, Anna Marie, is no one's fools. People have access into information now. And we need to make very sure that those documents are read. Before you sign those off, make sure they have been diligently checked. Don't only put in those documents to just candy coat the organization, because what you're doing is you're just building the brand. You're not building the reputation. And you need to start being transparent, showing the warts and all, so that when the surprises come, they're not really surprises. The other thing, sorry if I may just quickly, Anna Marie, just highlight 3 aspects on the way people absorb communication. Those documents are in written communication. Now, people generally absorb communication in 3 different ways. One is a visual. So a picture tells 1,000 words, or of course a TV interview or whatever. And then of course radio, because we're audible individuals. And then you've got the written format. So unfortunately, a lot of those documents only really attract people that sit and really diligently read those documents. How few people read those documents? I think we all can smile. How often has it happened when people haven't even read the annual report or have actually even read the due diligence report of any organization that they've invested in? So too often we're relying only on the written format. And I think that's what I'd like to suggest, that ultimately we start shifting into more visual and into audible, so we touch on 3 aspects of communication.
Thanks for that, Janine. But yeah, we've had a few questions. One question around really saying, in a time like this, some of these pillars that you were talking about, they can actually fail. And it's putting those pillars, some of those pillars currently in a time like we've got with the lockdown and the global crisis, they can put those pillars under pressure. So how do you maintain your reputation in a time of crisis? What are those extra things that if you were, that you would do to make sure that you not only protect, but actually grow and enhance the reputation of your organization in a crisis time like this?
It's a very good question. So this is, we're going to get through this. We're going to get through this. We are definitely all of us are being tested. Every single one of us are being tested beyond our expectation. And I think it's about us being able to flow with that right now and adapting to this. So please, all I say is, let's look at these 8 pillars. Right now, not everyone is going to be relevant to our current situation. But if we look at currently, if you don't have a great leader in your organization, we've got a challenge. So make sure in your organization you got the right leadership. The right leadership for the moment. You need someone that's high energy, high skills, high people impact, able to care for the employees. You'll see there on the left-hand side, the human capital. Make sure that your leadership is caring about its employees while they're going through a very, very challenging time. It's no use just driving the impact on the bottom line if your poor employees are really depressed, going through their own personal hell. GBV violence is exceptionally high at the moment. Are we asking those tough questions of what's actually happening in our homes? So our leadership right now needs to be a pretty holistic leader that is leading our organizations through these challenging times. So I ask all of us as leaders to look at ourselves. What kind of leader are you, and how can you be better right now?
Thanks, Janine. Sorry,
Yeah.
that links up with a question. One of the first questions that came through is around really, and I think this is very applicable question relevant for South Africa in particular right now, and probably other countries as well, but social transformation. The need for social transformation, I don't think has ever been more visible than it is right now. How does an organization, as part of its reputational management, as part of having a long-term sustainable strategy for the organization itself, how does it bring social transformation really onto the agenda and into the boardroom?
So I was in discussion with the CEO last week, and I was very impressed by her way of closing an organization down. It's just been announced in the media today, in fact, and the company's gone into liquidation. But the most important thing that she did through this whole process was transparency to her employees, transparency to how they were going to deal with things at all levels. But the key thing we made sure was, at home, are the people going to be okay? So it's also about how do you look at, have we got enough salary? Have we saved enough money in the business? Can we make sure we get access to enough money, even if we're going into liquidation, to make sure that the person that you are retrenching, whether it's a security guard or a receptionist, have they got a roof over their head with food on their table for at least a 2 to 3 month period? Being conscious enough through that process of a liquidation, are you taking that into consideration? The other example of another CEO just last week, a listed company, going through very challenging times. The first thing she did was she called in a couple of people and said, I want to make very sure the people that we were about to retrench, or the people that they were on probation or we were having challenges with, please, you need to call those individuals in, make sure that they understand that we are watching them. We want to make sure they deliver the best to their best ability right now, but please do not get rid of anybody in the organization right now, because I'm worried about the impact on society. They feed how many people in their family. So it is about being conscious right now and raising unconscious levels and being available to our society and social cohesion at the same time.
Thanks, Janine. We had a question around the quality of our products and our services, which I suppose, because we don't have our employees on the shop floor level or in the factories, etc., that is also impacted. And one of the comments that I want to make in response to that, and I'll hear whether you want to add to that, but I must tell you one thing: organizations that are not innovating right now, and if innovation is not high on the agenda of organizations, you are not going to survive. Innovating our products, innovating how we operate our business models, our strategies. Innovation should be absolutely at the highest level of priorities in organizations. And I don't know whether you have a quick comment to make on that.
Well, absolutely. If we don't innovate right now, we won't be around for the next 5 years. I think that where we can, even today, look at you. You as an organization, Fluid Rock, well done. This is a great initiative. And I think it's about us all working together. This is new for me, coming onto a webinar. Normally I would sit and work and train and develop people in a one-on-one basis or in a group basis. So this is innovation. Same thing with the Stellenbosch Graduate Institute. You've also been involved in innovation. So wherever we can innovate, let's do that. What I mean by the quality of our products and services during this period of time is, let's make very sure that if people are paying premium price for anything, whether I go and shop at Woolworths, Pick and Pay, or a Boxer store, let's make very sure that the service and standards of what I'm paying for is the same. That we mustn't drop our standards at this particular point in time. Wherever we can deliver, make sure it doesn't damage your reputation and your brand at the end of the day. It needs to be level playing fields.
Thanks, Janine. I'm going to ask in a second for Landman to just sort of share with us his views and just wrap up for us. But if I can just make one or two observations from my side, especially if I just on the social transformation question as well. And for us as individuals in this room this afternoon as well, the crisis out now and the need out there is huge. And we can sometimes feel overwhelmed by the need out there. And I really want to just encourage, to the point that you raised as well on some of the CEOs saying, so how is this impacting on our employees and our workforce? What can we do to help them? I have been participating in a few board meetings recently around, and it's all crisis special meetings called for purposes of discussing the impact of the current lockdown, etc. And I must tell you, in more than once, I left the meeting very disappointed, because the only conversation was around financial conversation. Very seldom did a board member say, but guys, in all of this, is our staff doing well? How's our team doing? Have we checked in with our team? So that to me, as I said, been quite disappointing. So I want to really urge everyone to make sure that, just in your sphere of influence, where you can make a difference, make sure that you're making the difference. Or my story about washing the penguins, just wash those penguins that, within your reach. And if we all just wash the penguins within our sphere of influence, we can actually have many clean penguins at the end of the day. And a last observation from my side: if we do not have consistency and alignment between our vision as organizations and our values, and we have a strong, consistent foundation from which we operate, so that every decision that's made, whether it's in the boardroom, whether it's in the office of the CEO, if we don't ask ourselves the whole time, or test our decisions and our strategy against our values, to say, is this aligned with our values? Then, you can put out how many media releases and reports and have nice ads and spend a lot of money on PR and building your brand. It will not be successful at the end of the day. So I really want to just urge our leadership out there to think about that as well. Do you know what the vision of your organization is? Do you know what the values are? Are you living those values? And if you are, I think actually that will in itself will enhance your reputation without you having to spend millions of money, of rands on adverts and PR and marketing out there. Frick, I want to ask you I know there was a comment coming through, Robin, around disruption and innovation, because I think that in itself is probably a topic that we should actually hold over for a next director's hour, because that in itself, I think, needs a lot of airtime as well. So I'm going to, with your consent permission, ask Frick to share a few of his insights before we close our hour together. Frick, from your side.
Thank you, Annemarie, and thank you, Janine. I've really tried to listen with the ears of a director sitting on boards, and there's some facetious advice coming from a Chinese proverb that says, "Don't consider your reputation, and then you may do anything you like." And having looked at your pillars here, I just realized how complex entities our organizations are. And if you look at these pillars in the context of COVID, one realizes that none of us are really naturally proficient in gaining and maintaining a good reputation. And the session just reminded me that reputation needs distinct consciousness from our side, because we are entrusted as a board with governance, and we have to increase the confidence of the company in the capital markets. And I'm so glad you started off by saying it's not PR, because that, I think, is sometimes the confusion. So Annemarie made kind of a Freudian slip. Instead of stakeholders, said stakeholders, but I don't think that's wrong, because our stakeholders has an aggregate estimation in which they hold the company, and the company stands on their shoulders, on the stakeholders' shoulders, and it is exceptionally important that it's done with a good reputation as a condition for that trust. What I also realized from your conversation is, maybe this is not new, but it's just the way that I experienced it listening to you, is that our reputation as part of our strategic management is an asset. It's a strategic property. It gives us that competitive advantage, or plays into it. It influences our corporate performance. And it will, and this is maybe an obvious observation, it will be difficult to survive or thrive without a good reputation in that space. You referred to the leadership, which I think is exceptionally important. I think the ethos of the board that needs to play into the ethos of the organization, which plays into things that are really, in concrete terms, our quality of our products and our services, which would be a reflection of the ethos, which are all the little components, the little ingredients that build up towards trust in the space. I think, Anna-Marie, in one of your sessions in that program, you say one of the deadly combinations is ignorance and arrogance. And that, I think, is a deadly combination for trust as well. So and I'm very grateful, Janine, that you have divided the corporate reputation into these factors, into these pillars, and that one can get a concrete hold of the elements that play into the content of this very important topic that we spoke about today. So thank you so much. That is what I take out of the session as a summary of what you have said. Thank you, Anna-Marie.
Thank you, Frick. I think the bottom line, ladies and gents, that we are saying is that reputation management is not going to happen by itself, number one. Number two, you're not going to overnight have a good reputation. It is something that, you know, and I must watch out if there's a coronation person on the line. I may have to pay royalties for using their slogan, which I see that's a trademark, but trust is earned. It needs conscious thinking, it needs conscious planning, it needs congruency, it needs to be authentic. And I think that's really what we're trying to say. If you sign off from here, take a bit of time out, make a few notes for yourself to say, how do we manage our reputation out there? What are the actual tangible things that we are doing? Are we successful? What are the building blocks? And start working consciously in building your reputation as your organization. We look forward to hosting you, God willing, in 2 weeks from now. And from my side, again, thank you to the team. Thank you for joining us. We'll sign off. Enjoy the long weekend. Enjoy the half release from tomorrow onwards, for whatever, in whatever form that is. Stay strong, stay safe, and God bless. Thank you. We're signing off.